Hi there. I'm dashing this off as just a quick update, but this past Thursday, George R. R. Martin made a new blog post in which he gave a big report on the set visit he did for the Duncan Egg TV series when it was filming in Belfast this past July. This is the second Game of Thrones spin-off show, which is officially titled A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. There was a whole back and forth about what do we name it and everything. And he covers a range of points in this, all very positive, and even posts some set photos of people in costume. But the biggest takeaway is just how enthusiastic he was about this, that he said it's as if the characters walked off of the page that I wrote. And he didn't even list a mood. He lists moods in his blog at the end for the past couple of ones he made when he was complaining about the House of the Dragon problems. This, he went back to putting moods on. He says excited, read into that as he will, but just from his words, and he says in the blog, I was really enthusiastic, that I was fighting with HBO the first half of the year, and I needed this. It really recharged me. That just how positive this was. So I'm not going to read it off word for word. That would make this 2 or 3 times as long. But just going over the major points of it, I encourage you to read through it because every line is pretty good. He says that he made multiple blog posts about his big Europe trip. That he went to Belfast, he went to see the Game of Thrones Museum, he met with various things for agents and other stuff. And on our summer travels, we next went to Ashford Meadows, where I'd heard there was a tournament going on. No way I was going to miss that, so off we went. Rumor was that some Targaryen princelings would be attending. I'm not going to read off the rest, but just going through it, he explains how I think he was arguing to call it the Hedge Knight, but they went with the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, even though it's really long. Last year, like 2023, they originally announced it as A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight, which is way too long. But a point here is Martin reiterates that Season 1 is adapting The Hedge Knight, the first novella. And then he says there's two more after that, The Sworn Sword and The Mystery Knight. That he's consistently said it's not covering the second one. This ties into the bigger discussion about the runtime, that after Warner slashed the budget on House of the Dragon to only 8 episodes last season, everyone who hadn't been following the news was worried of, wait, this show is only 6 episodes? It's adapting a short novella. It's not a long-form book. And there's one POV, it all takes place at one tournament, it's a character study. That if you're in any way familiar with this material, if anything, we were worried at how are they going to get 6 episodes out of this? That there was some argument from fans of maybe they're going to do 2 novellas in one season, because I could see this being done in 3 long episodes, but they're probably not going to be as big as House of the Dragon episodes, which are longer than Game of Thrones Season 6 episodes. That they're up to 62 minutes on average for a House of the Dragon episode. Like, I see these as being like 45-minute episodes to start with. And on top of that, like, I wouldn't say padding, but are they going to be expanding on things that weren't in the first novella? Like, the Blackfire Rebellion wasn't even mentioned in the first novella because Martin hadn't tied it in yet. That all comes in the second one. Whole debate we have just how much screen time is there going to be for this. And then again, on the page, like, they just say, and these 2 guys ran at each other. That could be like a 3-minute jousting sequence or something. Just, how long is it? But they've reiterated 6 episodes, which I think is more than enough. It is only based on the first one, and what else are they covering? On the other hand, he has said that we're going to try to show the stuff that happened off-screen between the first and second one, but I'd save that for Season 2, of the plague that hits. That they happen to be in Dorne at the time. There's this whole off-screen adventure and meeting his brother Maester Aemon when he's a teenager. And maybe they will end with that, I'm not sure. But he's reiterated it's adapting the first novella. And the second point also from this paragraph is he says, filming wrapped not long ago, and showrunner Ira Parker, who wrote House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 4, when Rhaenyra Goes to the Brothel was very well-written episodes, they made him showrunner on this. Ira Parker and his team are now in post-production, looking toward a debut sometime next year. Spring, I am hoping, but that's just a guess, no date has been set yet. If you haven't been following along, this has been a whole thing for like the past half a year of conflicting statements from Martin and HBO about when exactly it's going to premiere. Because we assumed it would be out by summer of 2025. And then when HBO announced it, they said late 2025, which is later than I thought. And then Martin made a blog post last month saying, "Oh, it'll be out by spring," and everyone latched onto it. And wait a minute, this contradicts what HBO said. Then he went back to that blog post in the aftermath and actually took out the word spring. We noticed that he had removed the word spring. Maybe HBO gave him a phone call about that. We really have no way of knowing. So he clarified that it is unclear, just that they're aiming for spring, but for all we know, it could come out by summer, is pretty much what we're saying now. A little more detail. Why is that? How can it be in flux? That it's finished, there isn't that much post-production, it's a tournament, that there isn't that much VFX work. It could be physically ready to air by like March, but that doesn't mean they will, for what I call political reasons. Of the scheduling gods have to figure out how to fit it in. For scheduling reasons, because May is the Emmy cutoff date, they have to figure out, the whole Tetris game of what fits where, of should we hold off on this until the summer because there's nothing else to anchor our summer schedule? Will other things be done in time? We're not really sure. If it comes out in spring, even if it does come out in that window, there's still a question of, would The Last of Us Season 2 or The Hedge Knight come first or second? That one or the other will probably start March 2nd, right after their winter show's finale. And then it'll run for like 7 episodes, and because Last of Us Season 2 is also less than 10 episodes. And then the other will alternate with that and still be ready by May, before the cutoff. We're not really sure. I think The Last of Us Season 2 has more VFX, so that might come second. And I was eager for, dear God, we need to, a shot in the arm to restore life to this franchise. We need to dunk an egg sooner instead of later. But thinking on it, maybe it'd be preferable to come second, because it's better to be the lead out from mega success The Last of Us, established show, than be a new untested show starting right after winter break, Discuss this in the comments. If I'd be willing to wait 2 months because it gives us more time to prepare, I'm not done with all the lore stuff I wanted to do, and what's another 2 months? All activity is stopped, and it would be better to be a lead out from The Last of Us Season 2 before people cancel their subscriptions and everything. So I don't know. So 2 points so far of just, yes, it's just adapting the first, it's not adapting the second. Maybe it's covering things from the gap between them. We don't really know. We haven't seen casting info for like people from Mad Lady Vaith or anything from the Capitol, so I don't think they're covering the plague yet. He clarified that, well, we think spring-ish, maybe summer, we're not really sure. And he runs down how it was part of an anthology originally. And this is actually really interesting, where he covers some background I was unfamiliar with on how the Hedge Knight novella got written. That I knew he was asked to contribute a 30,000 word novella for this anthology by different authors called Legends. And I forgot how many star-studded writers were in this. Stephen King, Terry Pratchett, Robert Jordan, Orson Scott Card, Anne McCaffrey, Terry Goodkind, Ursula K. Le Guin, all of these people were in there. And he wasn't really sure what to write at first. This was the first Game of Thrones spin-off. And he said some of the other stories he actually considered were one set during Robert's Rebellion, or one of Barristan Selmy during the War of the Ninepenny Kings, or Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, fighting the Laughing at Night, I think, or something at the Old Town at the Citadel. That he mulled all of these various possibilities, then decided, let's go even further back and do something with Aegon the Unlikely. Now, this character existed at the time because of the appendices, but wait a minute, how did Aemon's younger brother become king and all this stuff, and it just developed over time. Next paragraph, another point I'm really interested in is he says, and when you think about the influences on Martin, if you're trying to get in his head, to get his vision of this, what inspired him, he said he was really inspired by the tournament scenes in the 1952 Ivanhoe adaptation movie, the one with Elizabeth Taylor. That just terms of the pageantry and the tournaments and all that, that if you're looking for a visual reference, he's presumably told all the showrunners already, this is what was in my head when I was writing it, the old Ivanhoe adaptation. And I like what he says here, that all of my characters are my literary creations. They're my literary children in a sense, some more than others. And even so, Dunk and Egg are special. That when people, he says, everyone always asks the same question at a convention. Who's your favorite character? And it's like, I've been doing conventions for years. You could have Googled this. My favorites are Tyrion and Arya. Please stop. You wasted your question. Ask something original. But those are his top characters to write for. I mean, because maybe not his favorite as a person, but favorite as a, like, Victorian was so fun to write for, he made him a POV. But to say that Dunk and Egg, these two characters, are so special to me out of this entire universe I made is a really big compliment. And I mean to write the rest of their tales as well, in my copious spare time after I finish The Winds of Winter. Yes, yes, I know. But heading up to the shoot, he was as anxious as he was eager. It's a smaller show. I mean, there's a smaller budget. We'd expect that. It's a tournament. And there isn't really that much of a set. It's a tourney ground. It's mostly tents. They're not even building that many structures. And just in terms of the costume and everything, and he said, I was really happy when I got there. So I'm just running through the photos he posted. Here's, it's a tourney ground with the lists, which is what you call the banisters going back and forth. One thing he clarified is, in both Game of Thrones and even House of the Dragon, they actually only have one joust at a time. But the way they did it in that Ivanhoe movie and the way they're doing it in this is you have multiple rows. You have multiple pairs jousting at the same time. Not against each other, that would be some sort of trial of 7. But I mean, you see there's multiple rows there. They have like 3 pairs fighting each other at the same time, just for limited space and everything. So in terms of the tourney grounds, it never occurred to me visually we're going to have 3 sets of jousts on the screen at the same time. I would assume they'd have to digitally do that because the horses might get spooked if they have them. Real life tourney horses were able to do that because they'd spent a career doing it. I don't know if stunt horses would be as used to other horses running back and forth next to them like that. That's a question for the showrunners, of just in terms of horse safety, like do you run them at the same time or what? Next we have photos of Dunk and Egg are played by Peter Claffey and Dexter Saul Ansel. Great photo here, and it's nothing big, it's just, this is our first clear look at Dunk with Sir Arlen of Pennytree's shield, with the winged chalice on brown. I'm just going to post some images here from the comic book adaptation that came out years ago, that this is, smile to my face, this is Sir Arlen's shield, before he gets it repainted right before the tournament. That his master dies, and with no other options, and not a lot of money, just, I'll try my luck at the tournament and hope I get in the service of some lord if I win. Moving down, he just talks about the rest of the cast is wonderful. This is another big image. We see the shield again, and also, this is our first look at the Fossaway cousins, the good apple and the bad apple. I think this is the first time we've ever seen the Fossaway apple heraldry in live action. It just never came up in the other shows. So that's nice. And here we have, most of the rest of these are photos Martin took with people out of costume. That here's this happy set visit photo of Martin with Peter Claffey, who's Dunk, with director Owen Harris on the left, and on the right there with the long blonde hair is showrunner and head writer Ira Parker. And next we have another set photo of just Martin visiting, giving his blessing, standing with Tanseli Tootal, played by Tanzan Crawford. And she's not in costume. I wonder what her costume is going to be like, because we never really got a good sense of how they're going to handle Dornish people in this. That's going to be a big part of Season 1. I have other videos I'm going to talk about this that House of the Dragon seasons 1 and 2, and probably the rest of it, doesn't really have to include Dornish characters because it wasn't really affecting this war in the source material. But the unaddressed elephant in the room since Game of Thrones is you ruined Dorne and turned it into this racist B-movie sex comedy thing. That was what was this really progressive thing Martin had in his book turned into this insult, and no, everyone was too afraid to criticize it, that to criticize Benioff and Weiss for it. That this isn't, oh, Dorne is bad. You are the one who ruined it. This is insultingly awful, and they got Emmy awards. That a major point is season 1 of Dunk and Egg is right after Dorne joins the realm. Dunk falls in love with this Dornish puppeteer girl at a tournament, and a Targaryen attacks her because he's a jerk, and just the back and forth of that, of this is a real opportunity to, just as, you think of just back to House of the Dragon, just the first episode alone was, wow, this feels so much like the books again. This is the chance to redeem Dorne. So I wonder, like, what'll their costumes look like? Will they go with an entirely different look or something? And the puppet show, Martin talks about the puppet show looks amazing. And I've made videos about that, and I really hope they use it as a vehicle for mentioning things about the Dance of the Dragons in broad strokes, but like showing that 80 years on, in a society without TV or newspapers, popular culture has distorted that they think these characters were all caricatures, that Alicent was this schemer, that Rhaenyra was bloodthirsty, that history distorts, particularly among the common folk. Another photo he has here, I like they have these little statues that are apparently part of Ashford. That's T. Mickle, who is Martin's representative on the writer's room for House of the Dragon, wrote one season 2 episode, and here's the rest of her stuff. That's really the whole thing. It wasn't a lot of images, but it's just, look how happy Martin is, read how happy Martin is, that there will be other spin-offs 20 years from now that will not have Martin there to give his blessing. Like, I don't know, like 20 years from now, if they're doing when they get around to Blackfire Rebellion or Valyria or whatever, but that Martin is here to look at the set, filming before it premieres, and give it his blessing and say, it's like the characters walked off the page. That is special. And it means so much to him, and it's more of a character piece, which means it's easier to do. That you ask anyone who's read this, like Preston Jacobs, any of the other big channels, that it's just a guy going to a tournament worrying about money as, well, do I trade in this armor to get this much, to get it remade into tourney armor, but it is some of the tightest writing he's ever done. On the ground, boots on the ground setting, of course. That the bigger selling point of Dunk and Egg is it's the view from the bottom. It's a lot about classism and the suffering of the small folk. And they touch on the other stuff with the Dornish and everything in season 1, but that comes up later. But this was a really encouraging blog post, just in terms of what they're doing, that Martin made this set visit, and in context of the other blog updates, that he feels really recharged from this, and said as much. I barely got anything done the first half of the year. I was upset at HBO. That I don't know if this is what he needed to get started on Winds of Winter again. But it couldn't hurt. That he said, I was demoralized. I would have been if I was fighting with HBO for half a year. But when you really sit down and read through this whole thing, from him saying, I was hesitant to spend 2 months in Europe, but I realized I wasn't going to get any writing done anyway. And I still think that I was in such a funk of depression from discouraged fighting with HBO that I wouldn't have gotten anything done, and that I needed this, and it was worth it, that it was the morale boost I needed to get things done again. One can only hope, but he seems really enthusiastic about it. So in saying, yes, I intend to finish Winds of Winter and then do more Dunk and Egg, but it's nice to see some set photos. It's more in my mind's eye, I'm picturing the things that aren't on screen in the photo that I hope we see more video of when they do behind-the-scenes stuff for this actual show, of just Martin being there with the cast and complimenting them, and just that this has his blessing. That him, just taking a photo there with Peter Claffey, with Tamsin for Tanselli, just That they got to be there and have his seal of approval really meant something on a project that meant a lot to him. So I have been recovering from just how busy I was with House of the Dragon Season 2 and everything. I am ramping up to start making more content. I always said I'll get a lot more done once the first Dunk and Egg teaser comes out. This is not a teaser, this is a set report with some nice photos from George R. R. Martin, but I'm cycling back up again. Sorry about that. I'm going to make a separate schedule video after this one. Another thing is my computer was long overdue for repairs, and I'm preparing for that by I haven't backed up my stuff in like 2 years. So I have to back up all my things, then send it out to get repaired. But I keep saying, I'll do it a little later. I'll do it a little later. And it's been 6 months. I've needed repair work, and I need to organize all my stuff. So I'm not just sitting around going, oh, crud, what are we going to do now? There's a ton of stuff to report on, particularly with the Warner Discovery problems. The hope, of course, is that Zaslav gets pressured out by the end of the year. And other videos where I talk about, I really hope that most of Martin's concerns with the writers were due to things they had to truncate and shorten that even they didn't want to do. Like, if they had to make 8 episode seasons for seasons 3 and 4, they probably had to make cuts even they didn't want to do. That's the hope anyway. I'd rather that they resolve this. But I'm going to talk about that in separate videos. But then again, Elio Garcia, that's going to be a separate thing. Elio had this whole big thing he said recently from Westeros.org, who works with Martin. And if you think about it, if Martin didn't want to work with them again, he wouldn't be saying this. That Elio's repeatedly said, this Martin wants to keep working with the House of the Dragon crew, Ryan Condal and his team. He just wants them to actually listen to what he's saying. So maybe by the time Dunk and Egg starts, we'll know that we have a 10-episode season again for House of the Dragon Season 3. Because if this starts in March-ish next year, that'll be around when Season 3 has to start filming, so we'll know more by then. But, oh look, real significant updates for Dunk and Egg. A big, just feel-good George R. R. Martin set visit. Please visit the link and read it off in his own words. I'm already 20 minutes into this. Like I said, I dashed this off without planning it out. I wanted this to be half as long as it was, but this was really encouraging, this blog update. And it just covered a couple of different points that are good to know moving forward.